Kris, don't forget, Kris. You promised.
Kris Dreamer, the unspoken warrior of this story, our vessel. Yet we know so little of them. They rip out our soul and keep us in the dark. Yet still, they protect their friends and stop us from going too far. So what is Kris's true goal? If they care so deeply, why do they align with the enemy? And if they despise us so much, why do they keep us around? Well, my name is Icarus, and let us speak for the one who never speaks for themselves. Kris's relationship with the player is complicated. They hide things from us, get agitated when we attempt to act out, never let us fully be in control. Yet they keep us around. Why is that? Well, because they need us. Not to function. Kris has shown they are more than capable without our input, acting behind the scenes, even creating a dark fountain. So no, it's something much deeper than functionality. During the phone call in the kitchen, we hear something very interesting. They don't quite finish the sentence, but here's what I got from that. The soul is important for the church's dark world, and without it, something will happen to Kris. What if they can't enter a dark world without us? What if they can't survive it? Maybe a normal human soul in this world isn't as strong as a monster's. Maybe they're fragile. And if that's true, then the dark worlds are a locked door. And whether Kris likes it or not, we're the key. Multiple calls from an unknown being, a warm welcome from the coldest character, and at the center of it all, Kris. We don't know who the voice on the phone belongs to for sure, but whether it's the knight, an accomplice, or someone else entirely, they're feeding Kris information. And they might not be the only one. A colder figure may be involved, one with a strange understanding of what's going on. Carol arrives before Susie can learn anything, angrily cleaning the room. Yet the anger dissipates with Kris. Instead, it turns to approval. Both the caller and Carol want to keep the guitar's code hidden, and from Kris's actions, so do they. But I don't think Kris truly wants any of this. They just don't have a choice. After all, they did promise. But what was that promise? It must be important. Important enough for Kris to go this far. Important enough for them to sacrifice everything. And since it's so important, maybe it has something to do with Des. Kris has to have been involved in the disappearance of Des. And whether they couldn't stop it, or they were the cause of it, it's been slowly eating at them. With this burden, Kris became desperate, willing to do anything to make up for what happened to Des. That's when Carol and an unknown figure approach Kris and offer them a fix, a way to bring Des back. And with no other choice, Kris promised to do everything in their power to help. Kris doesn't want any of this. They never did. But grief weighs heavy on one's soul. Being the only human in a town full of monsters, Kris's childhood was bound to be strange. Early on, Kris was taken in by the Dreamers, and because of the family's close bonds, they grew close with the Holiday Sisters. Kris was especially close to Noelle, always pranking and scaring her. And yet the four children were inseparable, until Des disappeared. The families then grew distant, as did Kris and Noelle. Toriel and Asgore separated, and Kris changed. They began acting strange, colder, more isolated, depressed. For a long time, this is all we knew about Kris's past. But then chapters 3 and 4 gave us some more insight. In Tenna's games, we see subtle nods to Kris's past, moments with Asriel and Des watching cartoons and music videos. And before Tenna's boss fight, we see the family slowly grow distant, one by one, everyone leaving until no one is left. And in the third S-rank minigame, ERAM implies something darker, with one line.
Your eyes can't hide it, Kris. Without play, the knife grows dull.
A small glimpse into Kris's violent side. And Chapter 4's Egg Room echoes this sentiment, set in a therapy office where we don't stab each other. Here, Kris finds a blank canvas, and they begin sketching, lines reaching towards what they saw behind the tree, or maybe inside the bunker. But it's never complete. They erase, retry, erase again. The lines never seem to take shape. In the end, they are unsuccessful, and they try to clean the remnants from their hands. But they can never truly wash it all away. All of this helps us understand why Kris seems so dead inside, and why they remain quiet throughout the whole game. They've been through so much, and are still trying to bury some of it down. But even in the deepest silence, the past still echoes through. One thing I've yet to mention from Kris's past is back in Chapter 1, we learned Kris once played the piano, but over time that skill seemed to fade away. And this bothers Kris. Something that once brought them joy is now slipping away. They show frustration when we play poorly, and they refuse to say they'll never play again. But now, the once silent notes are softly returning. In Noelle's house, Kris, no longer under our control, approaches the piano and plays with abandon. And at the Dark World's piano, we fail at the puzzle. So Kris takes over and plays a beautiful piece with the emotion of someone who finally remembered how to feel. This isn't just music for Kris. It's the only way they can express themselves. Sometimes the loudest voice is one spoken with no words. The model family of hometown now lies in ruin. The Dreamers and the Holidays once shared a powerful bond. The family spent time together, and the children were inseparable. But things shifted. Des disappeared, and the foundations cracked. The Holidays stopped coming around. Toriel's and Asgore's marriage collapsed. And now, all that remains is fragments of what once was. Everyone still cares for Kris, but the feeling of abandonment is still clinging to them. And how could it not? They've lost almost everyone. Des is missing. Rudy is bedridden. Noelle barely speaks to them. Azriel's gone off to college. Asgore is struggling just to keep his life together. And Toriel, she's still with Kris, but she can't see their pain. Des might have been the only one to go missing that day, but to Kris, that's the day they lost everyone. One lace and string may never truly be free, and no one understands that better than Spampton G. Spampton. Everyone's favorite salesman is eerily similar to Kris. Two sides of the same coin, one a lightener, the other a darkener, one fully corrupted, while the other still clings to their humanity. Yet both are bound by their lack of freedom. Spampton begs Kris to help him reach his goal of becoming a real big shot. But once that dream comes to fruition, it's not enough. Even with all this power, the strings still hold him back. Once you cut all but one of his strings, Spampton becomes ecstatic. Freedom is within reach until the last string snaps, and he is left immobile, powerless, hollow. With strings he was limited, yet without them he is useless. True freedom is unobtainable, and for Kris, this is deeply disturbing. They saw the only one who can understand their situation fail at the last moment. And if someone that close to freedom could not succeed, what hope do they have? From rocky beginnings to newfound connections, Kris, isolated as they are, still manage to form bonds with a select few. The first friend we see Kris make is their former bully, Susie. Now, Susie and Kris had a rough relationship starting out, and Noel's blog gives us a small glimpse of this. A moment where Susie was bullying and threatening Kris, until Kris said something that made her feel uneasy. They didn't interact much after this, until chapter 1, where the two are forced to be partners. And in their first interaction, Susie threatens Kris, stating quiet people piss her off. And for a majority of the chapter, Susie acts harshly towards Kris, talking down on them and critiquing everything they do. But as we move forward, Susie's attitude begins to shift. She starts to warm up to Kris, trusting them, listening, letting them lead. And this bond isn't one-sided either. Kris begins to attach to Susie. In a moment with her life on the line, Kris finally takes control. Not for freedom, but to protect her. And we see this bond deepen as the chapters unfold. Susie isn't just tagging along anymore. She's eager for the next adventure, eager to spend time with Kris. And it doesn't end with the Dark Worlds either. From fun moments around town to solemn moments by the lake, they've developed an unbreakable bond. But Susie isn't the only friend Kris managed to make. A certain Dark Prince also became one. Rouse took a liking to Kris almost instantly, and maybe a little too instantly. While Rouse had good intentions, Kris couldn't reciprocate the kindness. Something about it always felt off. But even though Kris remained cautious, the early chapters held small flickers of connections. While Susie pulled our attention, Kris and Rouse shared moments, quiet ones, that we only got small glimpses of. But in the latest chapters, that caution begins to fade away. All because Rouse begins to drop the act. While the nice boy demeanor doesn't fade fully, we see a more genuine side of Rouse, the real Rouse. And this helps Kris connect with him. They start treating him like a real person. They prevent us from saying anything that may hurt his feelings, and comfort him when he's at his lowest. Even at the darkest point of their life, Kris still found people they could genuinely connect with. Because even in the darkest abyss, a small flame can still guide the way. Kris is going through something that is incomprehensible to most. So why is Kris doing all of this? It's not because they're evil or spiteful. If that was the case, they wouldn't care for their friends. It's because they're grieving and are desperate to get back what they once had. Desperate enough to give up their humanity. Kris isn't bad, nor are they good. They're just a scared child trying to fix their life. With all that said, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in due time.